It was 2015, and I had this itch for a solo road trip. I zeroed in on this abandoned fire lookout a few hours away, nestled deep within a forest. The hike up to it had me buzzing with excitement. Now I should probably mention that venturing, inside or camping there was technically off limits. Something about it not being maintained and potentially being structurally unsound. But being the curious soul I am, I'd done my online digging. Most folks who'd been there before seemed to think it was all right, though the last post I could find was from 3 years prior, so I was heading into the unknown. I found a little dip on the side of the road to park my car, slung my backpack packed with 2 days' worth of gear over my shoulder, and started the hike. These kinds of trips rarely have marked trails, so my handheld satellite GPS was my trusty guide, making sure I was heading in the right direction, even though most of the time I was just forging my own path through the dense woods. The hike from the road was a good 4 to 5 hours. The deeper I went, the thicker and tougher the terrain became. I was really counting on that fire lookout being in decent enough shape to camp in. If not, well, I'd just have to find some other spot nearby to pitch my tent for the night. After what felt like an eternity of trudging through the woods, I finally made it. I could see the structure peeking out above the trees, and as I got closer, it actually looked surprisingly intact. Sure, the paint was peeling, but it seemed to be holding its own. I gave the support beams a few good shoves and they felt rock solid. So, I decided to try my luck with the ladder. It was metal and felt sturdy enough, but it groaned with every step I took upwards. When I finally reached the top, I was speechless for a moment, completely awestruck by the view. I could see the entire forest stretching out in every direction. No buildings, no roads, no houses for miles, just endless woods. After soaking in the view, I walked around the narrow ledge and stepped inside the lookout. It was tiny, nothing, like those grand ones you see turned into fancy rentals. This was just one small room, maybe 150 square feet. There was a decaying bed shoved in one corner and an old wooden desk in the other, with rotting windows covering the entire wall. Not much else to see inside, so I dropped my bag, unrolled my sleeping mat and bag, and heated up some food on my little camping stove. As the sun began to set, I went back out to the ledge to watch. It was hands down one of the most incredible sunsets I'd ever witnessed. It felt like it was over in a flash, and then darkness swallowed everything. It was cloudy too, so there was no moon or stars to light up the sky. With nothing else to do, I stayed sitting on the ledge for a while, just enjoying the stillness. It was probably an hour or so into the night when I spotted something below me. There was a light moving through the trees. What struck me as odd was that it wasn't like a regular flashlight. It had this orangey glow and flickered almost like a campfire. That made me think it was a torch. Whoever was holding it was moving between the trees in the forest, not too far from where I was. The chances of someone else being out here at the same time as me, in such a remote spot with no real trail, were incredibly slim. Plus, wandering around in the dark with a torch seemed pretty strange. I watched as the light danced beneath the trees for a while, then it disappeared behind something and I couldn't see it anymore. For the next half hour, it didn't reappear. I stayed out on the ledge though, just taking in the peaceful quiet of the night. Eventually, the wind picked up, making it a bit chilly, so I stood up to take one last look before heading inside. But when I glanced down over the ledge, someone was there. They were standing at the bottom in the grassy area between the lookout and the woods. It looked like they were staring directly up at me. Maybe it was the person with the light I'd seen earlier. "Hello?" I called out, not really knowing what else to say. They didn't move or respond. It was just this weird 10 or 15 seconds of us looking at each other before they slowly raised their hand, like a silent acknowledgement or apology. Then they turned and walked into the woods, still without any light. Obviously, that was incredibly creepy and unsettling. But for some reason, in that moment, I felt this strange certainty that it was just another hiker looking for a place to stay in the lookout. Maybe they were just looking up to see if anyone was already inside. Why they hesitated to answer and only lifted their hand? I have no idea. I stayed outside for a little longer, but when nothing else happened, I went inside and got into my sleeping bag to warm up. It was a little hard to drift off with the wind rattling the windows and the wooden beams creaking beneath me, but eventually, I managed to fall asleep. It's hard to say how much time passed, but when I woke up, the wind had died down, and it was still pitch black outside. I opened my eyes, wondering why I was suddenly awake, and then I heard it. A familiar sound. The soft metallic creak of the ladder outside. I sat up, thinking I must be mistaken, but then I heard it again and again. Someone was climbing up the ladder. I couldn't tell how far up or down they were. I could just hear the hinges at the top of the ladder groaning with each step they took. Outside the windows, though, it was completely dark. I unzipped my sleeping bag and got up, my heart pounding as I grabbed my backpack and walked out onto the ledge. In the 20 or so seconds it took me to get up, the creaking got louder and faster, like they were hurrying before it suddenly stopped just as I reached the ledge. I stood there for a moment listening for another sound. Then I slowly walked around the walkway and peered around the corner at the opening to the ladder. No one was there. I carefully walked closer, my heart rate accelerating as I leaned over and looked down. Nobody was on the ladder. I was just in shock for a second, completely confused and scared, unsure what the hell was going on. Then, a sudden series of footsteps came rushing around the wooden walkway behind me. I only caught a glimpse of a dark figure darting between the windows on the other side. Without hesitating, I lowered myself onto the ladder and hurried down. It was terrifying trying to climb down the slippery metal ladder as my whole body shook with adrenaline, knowing someone was right above me. I was halfway down when I saw their head peek out from above. I didn't stop until I reached the bottom and bolted into the woods. Honestly, I don't know why I even grabbed my backpack when I got up to see what was going on, but it was the best decision I ever made. Maybe even saved my life. With my flashlight and GPS, I managed to hike my way out of there and back to my car. As far as I know, I wasn't followed. I drove away and never looked back.